Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program, State of the Union. We're going to do that. We've never done this before. We are going to air the State of the Union address. Going to have some folks afterwards going to give some commentary on what the president had to say. If we're going to get what we need to hear, and I think what we need to hear in this moment, two things. One, not sending our kids off to war. Two, we're going to deal with the economy. Got a plan, a way forward, a way to do this, and a way to solve those problems like inflation, supply chain crisis, and doing it in a way going to bring up the economy, going to make us all better off. Also, I think he's got to hit on some key points, some key stuff in this that I would like to hear hammer on. We're in a moment of decision, democracy or authoritarian rule of we the people, or strongman, and we're seeing this playing out right before our very eyes in Ukraine. This is what we're seeing. And, the sad reality in all of this is until we're able to really, push back and fight back on what's going on in the extreme right, who, if you've been listening to right-wing media, oh my goodness, losing their ever-loving freaking mind. But lots to get to in this, lots to go over. The president is just showed up at the podium. All of the applause, all of that stuff is happening. And when the president begins his speech, he's just handed the speech to the Speaker of the House. I seriously do not believe she's going to rip this one up. He has given one to Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's go to the speech.
And distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
All right, lots of applause. I think we're going to have to wait for everybody to find their seat. This is what I love about these. Everyone claps.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, General. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justice of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how we would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilk billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear. Our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test. And it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom and he will never, never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk. It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years, and the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth, and now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying American. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip that power the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology, the internet, technology is yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who was here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go, Pat, stand up. Pat came to see me, and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. And folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. what it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month so everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care. Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny. I may be wrong, but my guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody, but let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, and like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid 0 in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. And that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go in more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud. And look, I think we all agree, thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. And corporations have to compete. Their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this. Because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress. Tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach that point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. And folks, if you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, we've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look, we can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Moore was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking, of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act. And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our elections. Look, tonight, I like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges in a significant larger number so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't legitimately hear can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. And I've said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting Asian Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. And it's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors that stop doctors from prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're suffering from addiction, you should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take on mental health, especially among our children whose lives and education have been turned upside down. The American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic: bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks, thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help, and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look, the third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those in their family when they come home. My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world, never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness, a cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden. I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games. and he loved building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the #2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases. More support for patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I called ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department, projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more that make our forces more safer and be able to wage war with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those 4 things. My fellow Americans, tonight, we've gathered in this sacred space, the citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions, amid great strife, and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is this: the State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment. to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Well, that was really hit on all of the points that I was expecting, and then some. There was an interesting montage at the end. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst, going to share some thoughts on the president's speech. Your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break, right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So just a little over an hour the president spoke. Hit on every topic that you would have expected. I said there were two things that had to be front and foremost. What's going on in Ukraine, that's being dealt with, and the economy. I thought he came out and forcefully talked about how the way forward there. And then went back to the Build Back Better stuff. The idea that, we should be investing, the idea that we need to be helping families in this moment, and that the world isn't as dire, the country isn't as dire as, the right-wing spin machine would throw at us. And here to share some thoughts on the president's speech, I've asked former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, gut reaction to the president's spiel?
Wow. That's my gut. Wow. I've sat through many State of the Unions, and as a member of Congress, and then as a talk media news political analyst, I've been to other States of the Unions, including, President Obama. And this one just covered the bases. And I thought the ending was dynamic. He probably got more bipartisan applause and a standing ovation than has been done in the past.
Yeah.
So, I just thought he hit a lot of points. And also, now he hit some points that are going to cause a bit of heartburn for some people, also within the Democratic side,
the fund the police thing.
Side,
and look, and here's where you and I are going to agree. If Rashid Tlaib says defund the police in her response, I am donating to her opponent.
Yeah, because he made it very clear, and he made it clear to fund the police right out front, but he made it clear also to have reform and education and training. He was very, very balanced, but I was extremely impressed at, first of all, he did what he should do. He spent 20 minutes on the Ukraine issue and Russia, and he was with resolve. He was strong. Then he, went into inflation, and he tackled it. Didn't ignore it. He tackled it. Talked about the rescue plan, vaccinations, and then he did hit on the tax break, before helping the top 1%, and then went into how he wants to help, with Americans and child tax credits. And what he addressed what to do with the inflation. Then he talked about the infrastructure. He mentioned that. And then I really liked when he segued next, Rick, into the plan he had, which was it was detailed. Cut prescription drugs, cut the cost of insulin. He used the idea of the young child that was there. He mentioned cutting energy costs, weatherization for homes and businesses. He mentioned electric vehicles. He got into the child care again and, what it's costing. He talked about things that are hurting Americans and helping, obviously to make life rougher with the inflation. He talked about the present tax system, not being fair. He mentioned, of course, Ohio's Intel plant, which I thought was a great thing because that's going to help the entire country. And then he talked about the 4 steps. He, then went into COVID, about vaccinating the world, schools being open, and, of course, take vaccines and treatments, the pill that's coming out by Pfizer. He went into that. He talked about the right to vote under assault. He did mention he had a nominee to the Supreme Court, didn't dwell on it, but he mentioned it. Then he went into something that I saw Ted Cruz applaud, which maybe, I don't know if that helps him or not, but he went into immigration reform. He talked about the traffickers, the immigration judges need to do something with that, the screening. And he also mentioned border security, which is not necessarily a dirty word, okay? He
Right.
mentioned that. So what I see, Rick, is the balance. And again, I can't stress enough he went into opioid treatment. But he laid out that plan at the end, which I thought was great. And his strong ending about, America's strong, people are resilient, we're strong people. Then he said, go get them. I thought it was one of the best State of the Unions I have seen in a long time.
No, I thought he did an excellent job.
Excellent.
Now he's not Bill Clinton, he's not Barack Obama.
No.
And no one expected him to be, the great orator. He had some stumbles, he had some things, and you expect that. But overall, I thought he did a great job. He hit the themes I wanted him to hit on. At the beginning, talking about the difference between, the fight between democracy and autocracy. This fight for freedom that I think is so important for us to be focused on. And you're right. He pushed that positive tone at the end. That for me is the punchline. That's what gets people fired up and moving. But all of the other stuff, and maybe you can help me if I'm wrong here. All of the other stuff is this is what they should have been talking about for the last year, because he basically re-rolled out Build Back Better. This is basically all of the tenets of his Build Back Better plan that hadn't been articulated over the last year, and we've been just talking about numbers over.
Right. He took Build Back Better, and he took parts of it and laid it right out there is what I think he did. He laid out the child tax credit. He laid out about the automobiles and the electric vehicles and what's going to be done. Yeah, I think he, clearly, articulated it. And if it doesn't become one bill, but pieces are out there and are passed, it'll be a good thing. He related how it, helps to fight inflation. You're right about the delivery. If you look at the orators, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, I mean, they can deliver, speeches like nobody's business. And I know the president, maybe didn't have a 100 on delivery, but he was good.
Yep.
And his substance was excellent. And I thought the way they wrapped everything together was so well done. And he really had, I don't know what, somebody yelled out there at the end. Who knows who yelled what?
And I was going to get to that. I don't know what that was, but I believe the disgraceful moment was, when he was talking about his son. Because someone yelled something out that made everybody kind of groan and him stop.
Right.
And I don't know what it is, and I'm waiting to find out what it is. But
what lunatic did, and we'll see.
Who knows what that was?
Yeah.
But it's one of those moments where that's where you just shut the blank up.
Yeah, right. That's like the "you lie" moment.
Exactly.
That happened before, that made everybody cringe under President Obama. But this was well put together, and I just don't think he might get some heat, but I just don't see where a lot of the citizens in the country are going to look at this talk and say, "Oh, that was way off." I thought it was very, very balanced. Very balanced.
Yeah, I think he hit the concerns of mainstream America. I mean, people are struggling. People need to figure out how they're going to get child care. People are going to need to figure out how they're going to pay for prescription drugs. The fact that we have not dealt with that prescription drug issue, and it's something that is enormously popular to do, tells me that our system is somehow broken, because I don't care what political stripe you are, the fact that, as he pointed out in the speech, the fact that a drug company is going to take something that costs them $10 and charge 30 times or more to get that life-saving drug to something's wrong in that system. And sorry,
right.
That is capitalism being exploitation.
And he said, I'm a capitalist, but exploitation. You're right. He mentioned that, and then he mentioned things that are easy to support: the prescription drug costs, the crackdown on companies overcharging consumers who can be against that. Nursing homes, Medicare setting higher standards for the nursing homes. I just thought he laid out a very good agenda, and if he can stay with this agenda, I think he's going to improve his numbers. I just was very impressed with the quality of what he went after.
Yeah, I had tweeted out earlier today that, I've been grateful for President Biden being in office, because he has provided what I said was steady, calming, and quiet strength that we've needed, especially in this moment as you're looking at, we're on the precipice of global war. We don't need somebody, some bombastic loudmouth, slamming his fists on the table and screaming and carrying on. We need direction, we need focus, and we need calm. And I think this speech, this was that. This was him coming out saying, this is this. I'm bringing you the report, and this is Joe Biden. This is who he is, and I think it was a good speech.
Well, you said it best. I served with him. This is the Joe Biden. I think we knew in the Congress, and this met more. My expectations were not super high. They weren't super low, Rick, but they were like, okay, he's probably going to do decent tonight, and he needs to do decent tonight. But this went way above what my expectations were.
No, absolutely. Because look, I'm someone who, Joe Biden is not an orator.
Right.
I want Joe Biden in there to be the guy who's directing things, who understands policy, who understands how to move things along. If I'm going to choose someone to give up a speech, come and stand up and give a speech, it is not going to be him. Right. It is not his strong suit. But I thought he came out, he did what he had to do.
He did good.
Now, what we're going to hear, the right-wing, outrage machine, the chaos merchants, all we're going to hear tomorrow is how he slipped up and said Iranian instead of Ukrainian.
Yeah, I heard that. Right.
And that's going to be their focus. That clip is going to be played 1 million times all over talk radio, and they're going to mock him. And the thing that gets me is in this moment, especially in a moment where we're on the brink of possible war, you've got these people who are out there saying, look how weak he is, look how feeble he is. I didn't see that tonight. I saw a guy who is not a great orator, but somebody who was right on message.
Right. He did good. And yes, he had the slip, which I've heard many presidents slip at some point in time with something, but I thought he did a very good job. I really was very impressed with it. And again, if you look at besides whoever yelled out what, which I hope that doesn't become the complete focus of of the whole night, but if you look at the response, and I watched very closely, on television to see how the Republicans were responding, and Rick, it wasn't bad.
No,
it really wasn't.
Now, I do want to know what dirtbag had something to say about his son.
Yeah, if it was involving his son, it's just going to be horrible, obviously.
And it should be whoever that is, because look,
right.
and Biden is right. Look, he doesn't know what caused his son's brain cancer, but the fact that he sympathizes with people who served in the military, who are seeing these cancers pop up, and he is going from a policy position going, hey, look, I know what suffering and loss is. My son died from this, and I get it. And we're going to move a policy. I think that's important. I think empathy and understanding is something I want in a president. I know, I'll tell you this, it's a hell of a lot better than it was the 4 years before him.
And it's a stabilizing type of speech, and it was one that had a lot of unity to it, and he laid out how there could be unity. a lot of the things he mentioned, I was just sitting here thinking to myself, we could get more support for the veterans, more research for cancer, go after the traffickers, but help people with recovery. In immigration system, he mentioned a big balance there, and I was just thinking of the things he went through, and I thought that would be a pretty good year if they can get even just pieces of those.
It'd be a great year. It'd be a great way to help people who are struggling. Now, as he was talking about his unity agenda, I couldn't help but think of you. I know you are somebody who is big in helping people get through recovery and dealing with addiction and dealing with all of that stuff. As he was going through this, because dealing with the opioid addiction crisis is a huge thing. Dealing with mental health crisis, that's enormous as well. And of course, our veterans, and all down the line. But the addiction part of it. Tell me your thoughts when you were hearing that.
Oh, when I heard it, it just hit home because I sponsor people in addiction. And just today, 4 weeks ago, there was a guy in my flip doing electrical wiring, and he died of an overdose last night. So, and he was, alive and practicing his trade, about 3 weeks ago. But there's such a need for the addiction recovery, and I just thought it was so good that he brought it up. And there's, some money out there and support for the issue. I really liked it. When he started down that path, I thought, good for him to push that.
No, it's the important thing. Last line of question I've got. What do you're obviously someone who's seen a bunch of these. You're someone who's done messaging. Tomorrow, what should the Democrats be hammering on? What's that message? What's that bumper sticker? What's that message for folks in the morning?
I think that the message needs to be that America cares about its people. It cares about its working people, and it wants to make fairness in our society. And the way to do it is, to help people through prescription drugs. And, what the president said. Energy costs, inflation. I think they can really put together some pieces of what he said and use it as what I always like to refer to as the mantra, that we're back, and we're back to make people's lives better. I think it would be a great way to capture what he said and just work it through.
This is the beginning, and this is the kickoff of starting that messaging that needs to be done for November and getting something done before then and having something to bring back to the voters and go, look, we've been talking about this. We got it done. We did it. This is how things are going to be better. I think that's the path forward.
Right. Helping Americans with a better life.
There you go. The simple stuff. Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst. And look, as I said, I didn't have high expectations of delivery. It was content I was looking for. Were there going to be slip-ups? Were there going to be gaffes? Yeah, of course. It's Joe Biden. If he gave a perfect speech, I would be disappointed. Because then I would go, well, maybe the conspiratorial nuts are right. Maybe they did replace him with a machine. Gonna take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Scott Paul is going to be here from the Alliance for American Manufacturing. I know his ears were ringing when they were talking about Buy American, the Berry Amendment, manufacturing, jobs, all of that. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1900. That was the day the members of the Granite Cutters National Union walked out on strike. Their demands were improved wages and the 8-hour day. The leader of the strike was James Duncan, a Scottish granite cutter. Duncan had been elected granite cutter president in 1885. He was one of the founders of the American Federation of Labor. He served on the AFL's executive committee and was a close personal advisor of AFL President Samuel Gompers. Most of the granite cutters were located in cities on the East Coast. The union's first local was founded in Maine in 1877. Like many skilled trade unions of its day, under Duncan's leadership, the organization did not welcome black members. Duncan actively encouraged employers in the South to hire only white granite cutters. The strike of 1900 lasted until mid-May. It ended with a victory for the union, including the 8-hour workday for every local of granite cutters. Because their skills were often in high demand, tradecraft unions were sometimes able to win concessions from employers on matters of wages, hours, and working conditions. These victories by skilled craftsmen helped pave the way for the 8-hour workday to become the standard workday for all working people in the United States. The union also won a minimum wage standard and grievance procedure. In 1905, the Granite Cutters changed their name to the Granite Cutters International Union. During the 20th century, changes in technology changed the labor of granite cutting. Machines reduced the number of workers. In the 1920s, the union had more than 10,000 members. But by the late 1970s, it had dropped to less than 4,000 members. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Our local newspapers are being merged, purged, shrunk, shut down, and looted by Wall Street profiteers. Yet, there's good news. In the towns those media vultures are torching, a phoenix is rising. Hundreds of determined locals, often led by people of color, are finding new ways to pay for and revive top-quality local journalism. For example, the Ferndale Enterprise moved to an old Victorian home, renting upstairs rooms to vacationers to subsidize the paper. Also, while aloof Wall Street owners have no connection to us or our towns, the scrappy new community papers are stressing their grassroots connection by moving into friendlier, more central, street-level spaces such as public libraries and community centers, so that regular people can see them and have direct access to their reporters and editors. Then there's the editor of the Sahan Journal in Minneapolis, who moves his weekly editorial meeting to the offices of various grassroots groups so their members can help shape the paper's coverage. And in Marfa, Texas, the Big Bend Sentinel is literally serving the public, not only with a good weekly, but also with the Sentinel, a combo coffee shop, cozy bar, cafe, event space, and hangout for locals to meet and greet. In ways big and small, dedicated local journalists are experimenting with funding, structure, staffing, etc. to produce the news that democracy requires. Note to Wall Street vultures, these newspaper ventures aren't interested in scaling up to maximize investor profits. As they know, it was corporate cost-cutting, consolidation, and scaling that got us into today's mess of journalistic collapse. And, unlike the Wall Street model, their success is not measured simply by financial return, but also by how they do at keeping citizens informed and engaged. This is Jim Hightower saying, now that's real journalism.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, good speech. You know, at the end of it, you know, I know the chaos merchants in the morning are going to be tripping all over themselves to attack what the president had to say. But if you're a working class person, your ears had to be perking up at the fact that there is someone sitting in the Oval Office who gives a rat's behind about you and your family, who's thinking about how we're going to lower the cost of drugs, childcare, get low-cost housing for people, solving some of the inflation problems, not his making, by the way. What he didn't go into, and I give him credit, he didn't go into, hey, how did we get here? What giant pile of steaming you-know-what did he inherit? He has just picked it up and said, we're going forward. And here to share some thoughts on the speech, I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org is their website. I know his ears were perked up during at least a portion of the speech. That's why we've asked Scott to come talk with us. Scott, thanks for being here.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
So I got to imagine when he's talking about Made in America, he's talking about the pride of stamping Made in the USA on something. you and your staff have got to be going, yes, finally, after years, decades, we've got a president who has heard us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And the added benefit of this, because I will point out that, if you look at State of the Union addresses, virtually every president in every speech has talked about factories or manufacturing or even made in America. Okay, sometimes it's a passing mention, but this was like the core of the economic message, right? It's like what we've done so far and also what we're going to do. And I appreciated the way that it was framed. It was about both building jobs and building resilience because of all the challenges we've seen with the pandemic or, war in Europe or whatever. Having some capabilities here at home makes sense. And also as a tool to fight inflation, kind of like the supply side in a good way response to inflation, so that rather than cutting wages, we're going to make more stuff. We're going to make it here. We're gonna do it that way. And so I thought that was refreshing. And the thing that Joe Biden brings to this that I think that other presidents have failed to bring to this is a record of achievement so far. I mean, they've put into place a Buy American plan. I mean, they have to implement some of it, but they have a plan. They have a person who directs this at the White House. In the infrastructure and jobs bill, there are 60 pages of Buy American rules on how the steel has to come from the United States of America, the other building materials, for all of the pipes and bridges and all of that stuff. So that's in progress. And also what needs to be done. And he pointed this out as well. Like, we need this competitiveness bill to finance innovation, workforce training, and overcome some of the capital cost barriers, and also put into place more trade enforcement tools so that we can get more of these factory openings in the United States. So I like the policy, I like the values, and I also like what they've done so far. And I will add this, and it's something that I've agreed with for a long time. I am from the Midwest. I hate when it's called the Rust Belt. It drives me crazy. And so to have him mention that in a speech and say it's the industrial heartland, let's be honest. If Intel is building a factory in Ohio, you can't call it the damn Rust Belt. This is where innovation and jobs in the future are happening, and I really appreciated that as well.
No, I'm with you. I grew up in Cleveland, same thing. But sadly, for a long time, and this is where it comes from. Where I grew up, those factories were rusting and falling down, and and were left to languish. We now have an administration that's saying we're going to rebuild that whole build back better thing. To me, extremely important, as long as we're talking about bringing back the manufacturing prowess that we once had, especially in this moment. And the one thing that I don't think that he hit on that I would have liked to have seen is him tie what's going on in Ukraine with Russia and this kind of this problem to some kind of national call to action to revive not just manufacturing, but move in a direction to get us energy independent. I would have liked to have seen something of a green agenda. I do understand why he didn't, but I would have liked to have seen that as well.
Yeah, I think it's important of what are the things that we can do to make sure that our future is brighter and that we're not at risk because of a vulnerability like that. I think that's absolutely true. And sort of where he was going with the rest of his speech, and I think this is important, it's like, let's build a framework where people in America who are working for a living can thrive and can feel safe, can feel comfortable, and thrive through some of the policies that he laid out with respect to childcare or fair taxation, healthcare, what have you. And also that, we are, we're a nation that endures crisis. It'd be lovely to be crisis free. That's just not the world we live in. But we will be okay. If we have the right leadership, if we hang together here, that we can come through this stuff stronger. And I think that's a very appealing message to a lot of people. And Rick, I just want to add, because I thought this was remarkable. This was a speech that was free of grievances, which is a welcome change from the past 4 years, certainly, he could have easily laid out thousands of grievances. He did not. To his great credit, it was very, very optimistic. And yeah, he took corporations to task for cheating or for avoiding taxes, and for some Republicans for enabling them. But that was it, basically. And he could have easily said, Trump promised you buy American or manufacturing. He didn't deliver. He said he'd save those jobs. He didn't. He said he'd bring a big Foxconn plant to Wisconsin. It's, a warehouse, basically. It's not 20,000 jobs. But he didn't. He chose a very, very positive road, I think, to his great credit. And, if for whatever reason, if he's not appealing to the majority of Americans right now in terms of his job performance, I think that the State of the Union address, how it was framed, certainly the policy, the tone, should win some folks back. It may take some time, but I think it should, because I think it was very, very sound.
Yeah.
Fundamentally very sound.
For me, it's right in that Joe Biden wheelhouse, though. This is a guy who just got to get stuff done. Got to get up every day, focus straight ahead, keep plowing ahead, got work to do. All of the other stuff don't have time for. And I'm glad you brought that up, that it was free of grievance, which, like you said, for the last 4 years, nothing but. Because he could have come out and said, hey, it was so hard what we got. It was, I was saddled with all this. And I said it at the beginning. Look, this guy was handed a big, giant, steaming, what sandwich. And he has moved us forward and gotten up every day with the singular focus of how do we make lives better. I think this speech moved us in that direction. But here's again, my problem is, I know what the chaos merchants on the right are going to focus on tomorrow. It's all going to be tearing down. It's all going to be divisive. He said Iranian instead of Ukrainian. He said, this or that. That's part of my big problem in this, is that there's so many voices to tear us apart.
Yeah, well, look, he's human, and if that's the best they've got, then they need to go back to work. Because again, if you look at the policies from prescription drugs to the Made in America, to all of that, I think all of those are not only things that we as a country need to be doing. I think they're things that are also wildly popular with a big cross section of American voters. I think the way in which he framed it, which is like, we will endure, we'll persevere, don't bet against America, is also kind of a value that people respond to as well. And so, you or I, we're not going to fix the politics or the crisis in the kind of the media, certainly on the right of center stuff, Rick. But I do think that, Biden obviously demonstrated that he could win an election, which he did, in 2020. And, his job, and I think that folks in the White House recognize this as well, is to that group of folks who who went for him, let's make sure that we're talking to them and that we're getting them back. And they it may be because they were sick of the pandemic, or for a lot of other reasons, that they've kind of moved away. But let's find a way to get them back in. And I think this speech certainly opened the door.
Yeah,
for that.
At least that's my view on it. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. If you want to check out the work that they do. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast so you can hear the president's speech, also some of the commentary thus far. I'm sure this is something we're going to be talking about throughout the week. Now, he did allude to the Berry Amendment, and I want to go back to that because I think it's really important, because he did say, look, Democratic administrations and Republican administrations have come out and said, hey, we're going to do something about this. And then, well, not so much. This is something you guys at the Alliance for American Manufacturing have focused on like a laser. How would just doing what the law already says, which is we need to have domestic procurement for our military things, how much would that help our economy and help manufacturing in our country?
Yeah, it would, Rick. It's a great question, and I was honestly surprised by the details he went into. It was pretty wonky. but it was great as someone who has called for this for more than a decade. And here's the deal, there is a great deal of discretion that an administration has on applying these domestic preferences, like the requirements that some federal spending has to be you got to buy American for it if you can. And it's been eroded over the years. There's been a lot of waivers given. A lot of countries have been exempted. Some products have been exempted. The percentage that's considered to be American is really low. In some cases, it's like 55% or just, which is barely, which is not enough. And so to his great credit, and through a bunch of executive orders, I mean, there's been hundreds of pages, and there was just a big report that was issued last week on supply chains that includes some of this as well. They've said, look, we got to do a better job. And so we're going to increase that threshold up from 55%, eventually get it up to 70% and above for some stuff. We're going to apply it to more types of spending. And we're going to make sure that we're not waiving this requirement just because someone asks us to. We're going to look critically at why they want to, and if they really can't find it, and if we can find a domestic source for it, and it does mean jobs. I mean, we know that like there's a percentage of production that is moved abroad in part because there is not a procurement market here, and if you have that procurement market, you'll be able to attract more stuff here at home. There's just a great example from the last 2 months where a foreign firm said, we're going to make electric vehicle charging systems in the United States so that they are Buy America compliant. And so the jobs will be created here in the United States, and we won't be importing this specifically because of these requirements. And so it can be a magnet for investment in the United States. And then the other question is, how much are you going to spend? And so for infrastructure, we know that, hey, we've got a really good down payment here, and that this is going to be durable. And so that combination of having the policy and the investment together can be a powerful driver of investment in manufacturing.
Now, the president did say something that I thought was really interesting, that he signed more bipartisan bills than anybody, something like 80 of them in the first year, which kind of throws against the narrative that Washington's broken, that it's divided. I know that was put there on purpose to get people going, hey, well, all of these other things like prescription drugs and child care and insulin and all of these other things, maybe this is doable too. I know you're someone who's been around Washington a long time. Do you think this is something that will get out of D.C. into the mainstream? Do you think, the average everyday working class stiff like me going to grab onto that?
Yeah, well, if I were in government, I would be talking about these issues every day, and I would be talking about them to the extent that I was sick of hearing myself talking about them, and I would be doing something about it as well, obviously, because you have to match your rhetoric with actions, I think, because that's the only way to break through. People are busy. Some will have tuned into the State of the Union. Many Americans will not. They won't know a thing about it. And so you need to make sure that people know the kind of agenda that you're offering them, that you want to boost the minimum wage, that you want to provide more help for childcare, that you want to lower prescription drug prices, that you want to make sure that there aren't these healthcare, surprise bills and that insulin costs so much, that you're going to make sure that we have a good educational system, that we're going to have these opportunities, that we're going to rebuild our infrastructure. And I think that it bears a constant reminder. And so just talking about it one night isn't going to get the job done, to be clear. This is like, I heard a guy I really respect say, State of the Union is like cotton candy. It tastes really sweet, but it's gone. It kind of evaporates within 24 hours and there's nothing there, right? So, but you got to make it durable by going out on the road, by reminding people of what's at stake, of what you're doing, and listening to them as well. Yep. To make sure that you're on track. All of this while trying to navigate, a monumental crisis in Europe, something that we haven't seen for a generation. And so, I for one, am glad that we have a president like Biden who is quite familiar with diplomacy, with foreign policy, who knows these leaders, who's been engaged in strategy conversations, and I think that who has done this very, very deftly, and who has a strong domestic agenda that he can go out and sell. But I think that's the key, is that they have to keep talking about this. It can't be, well, that was a great speech, let's move on to something else. They need to keep out there and remind people what's happening, and point to those factories that are going to be built because of the investments they're making in the American economy.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I think the one thing that I'm most grateful for from this president is he has provided that steady, calming, quiet strength that we need in this moment, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, but also in the economy. We don't need somebody slamming their fist on the table, carrying on. We need somebody who's going to get up and do the job and understands what the average everyday working stiff's going through. And this is that message, because what I heard was the Build Back Better plan. I heard this is what it was. This is what it's been. They should have been out there touting this, from the mountaintops for the last year. So for me, this is part of that, and we'll see where it goes. Now, a couple of things didn't get in there, like you brought up minimum wage. That didn't seem to make it in, and I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of people complaining what didn't get it in. You got a little over an hour. You could only jam so much into that.
Yeah. I think you did mention briefly about raising wages, and then obviously the PRO Act. But you're right. I think that's always the question with the State of the Union, is that what's going to be the focus and how much are you going to talk about? And it is a balancing act. And I think for speechwriters, it's also a very frustrating speech, because they get pressed from all sides about how this has to be. and it's hard to have a central theme, and if you were to ask me, even with the theme from the speech tonight, it's kind of hard to dissect, but I do think that the theme was like, we have some challenges, but look, we have a plan. We're grown up about this. We're going to handle the stuff abroad. We're getting through COVID, and we have an agenda to help rebuild the working class in the United States. And I guess that's the way that I would kind of, summarize the thrust of it, along with the various policy things that accompany it. But I think it's a very hard speech to give, in part because you're like, well, I need to talk about that. I need to talk about this. And all of those issues are very, very important. The thing that is the determining factor, Rick, and you and I both know this, is like, where do they put their political capital? I mean, what gets done? And then, what can they do on their own through executive action? And where are they going to put their political capital with the Congress to try to get things done as well? And so I think that's the test that we've yet to see.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I'll tell you, I look at Biden as a veteran coach, who's talking to a team who's a couple of points behind, been there before a million times, steady control. Hey, no problem. We've been here. We've seen this. We've done it before. We're gonna come out of it okay. We're fine. We're gonna do better on the other side. I thought it was very positive and all in the right direction. But good stuff all along. Final thought, grade. If you had to give him a grade, what would it be?
If I had to give him a grade, I would give him an A, because I think this is a hard speech to give, and I'm sure that all of their planning for this changed dramatically over the last week and a half with what happened in Ukraine. So to be able to thread that narrative together, I think was great. And the reason why I give it an A as well is the substance, is that this is a plan that can help to rebuild the middle class in America. And not overlook them and make them feel left on the sidelines. And so I think that having that front and center, that's authentic Joe Biden. That's what he talked about a year ago, 2 years ago. And now it's time to go deliver.
There you go. Good stuff. Scott, as always, great stuff. I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Of course, Rick. Always great to be with you.
Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. You can check that out. We'll get links out on social media. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. What are you thinking on this? Was this what needed to be said in this moment? As I said from the beginning, I think this is Biden being Biden in a very calm way, laying out, what needs to be done, caring about Joe Sixpack and the guy who carries the jelly bucket to work, laying out how we're going to deal with the problems in front of us in that generation's kind of way. Don't get too upset about it. We got problems. We've had problems before. We've got possibilities, and I love that frame. Out of all of these crises, we think about the possibilities of what could come. I love that frame because that hope and that optimism, that thinking about tomorrow is going to be a better day instead of, and Scott Paul was spot on. No grievance. Man, is that not refreshing? The fact that all we keep hearing from people is angry about this, angry about that. Instead of saying, hey, how do we fix problems? I listened to right-wing blather all day today, and it was nothing but pointing fingers at this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, everything sucks, the economy's horrible. I'm going, I don't know, most people I know are doing pretty well. Prices are up, yeah, we got to deal with that. There's some supply chain issues, yeah, but you know what? There's stuff on the shelves. I don't know where these folks live. I know it's the alternative facts world and the alternative reality world. I get that. But the world that they paint, I don't see this angry, this outrage, this chaos that they have to keep pushing to keep people engaged with them isn't the reality of the country. Most people, I do believe, are like me and like Scott and like the president, hopeful. Tomorrow can be a better day. We can make things better. We can fix problems. I've been saying for years, I don't care what your political ideology is. I want to get things done. We've got things that we have to do. And this speech solidified that. We got stuff that needs to be done. I mean, for me, if you take one thing from this speech, he highlighted the insulin prices. It costs $10 to produce a vial of insulin. And yet you're going to charge 30 times that? When I've put it out on Twitter and people have gone, hey, my kids have to pay this, $300, $400, $500 for their medications. That's insane. That is a concrete way of how we can help working class families to make it to tomorrow. We can help retirees. We can help workers. But, hey, it's always easier to be angry about something. So a good speech, interesting speech, some good punchlines in there, unwavering resolve of freedom over tyranny. Love that line. The one of I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is exploitation. Absolutely. And then going back to the reality. We're going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. That's important stuff. Fantastic stuff. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Get the app on your smartphone so you don't even have to do that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Did you think this speech was what needed to be said? Do you think this was the moment? Or should he have come out with some grievance? Should he come out angry, pointing fingers at the orange guy? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on social media at ricksmithshow.com. There's all the spaces there, but Twitter at Rick Smith Show, YouTube, Facebook, all of that stuff. Thanks so much. See you next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people